Assalamu alaikum. So in today's video I would be discussing about how you can create graphene and nanotubes and all the basics that come along with it. So firstly, to create graphene you need to create a graphite structure out of carbon. So here in the left side, in the left picture, you can see that a graphite structure is created from carbon, and it has been visualized with the help of Vesta. And if you visualize the same thing with OV2, you can see that there are only 4 atoms in one unit cell, but what happens with Vesta is it duplicates the cell along all axes. Now in case of graphene, what you need to do is graphene is actually a derivative of graphite, kind of. That is, if we take the graphite structure along a single plane only, we can find graphene. So what we need to do is we can pull out the bottommost layer of this structure, and we can bottommost layer like this layer from this structure, and you can find graphene. And if you need to make this particular structure orthogonal, you can use the option orthogonal cell, and you can create the orthogonal version of this structure, and you can also then later visualize it. So what is single wall carbon nanotube? So basically, when the radius of the tube is very small, like you can express it with some nanometers, you normally define it as nanotubes. And if the element is carbon, and moreover you can see that there is only a single layer of carbon, so it is called single wall carbon nanotubes. In the future, that is in the next slide, you can see that there are actually 2 layers, so you can define it as multi-wall carbon nanotubes. And the creation of nanotube is not limited to only carbon. You can also use other elements. For example, in this particular slide, you can see that the nanotube is created by boron and nitrogen, and hence it is called boron nitride single walled nanotube, and you can later visualize it in ATOMSK. So I would be showing you all the codes by using ATOMSK. So firstly, you can open the terminal, that is the PowerShell, and you can write the codes. For example, firstly, for graphite, ATOMSK create graphite. Then you need to input the 2 lattice parameters 3.21 and 5.213 for the HCP structure, then the element carbon, then graphite.xsf file format, which is your output. Our file is already created. Now you can visualize it with the help of OV2. Okay, so this is our file. You can see that there are actually 4 atoms per unit cell, and to create the graphene you need to delete all the atoms that are above the XY plane. For example, these 2 atoms. So how can you do this thing? I copy this part. So before the output you need to cut all the atoms. So what you need to do is, after carbon you use cut above 0.2 Armstrong, everything you cut from above 0.2 Armstrong and along the z-axis. So here is our graphene structure. Okay, yes, we are overwriting the previous structure, and this is our new structure. You see there are only 2 atoms in this unit cell, and this is our graphene structure. Now if you want to create the carbon nanotube, you can also make the orthogonal version by using the option orthogonal cell, which is very easy. So in case of carbon nanotube, you use ATOMSK -- create the name of the structure nanotube, firstly you use 2.6. So this 2.6 is the bond length, that is the distance between two carbon atoms present in a bond. Next you need to input the value of two chiral indices. So the first chiral index 8, it actually denotes the value m. So m means the number of unit vectors along the zigzag direction, and the second value 0, which denotes which is mainly n, it is the number of unit vectors along the armchair direction. So it is basically two directions, and it denotes how many spaces or how many unit vectors you need to move before putting the second atom, and it also helps in realizing how the structure would be. So after I input carbon element, then the output file cnt.cfg. So our file is already done. If you want to visualize it, cnt.cfg. Okay, so this is our carbon nanotube. So I need to explain some more things beside this. So you see the first value is m, which indicate the first value is m and the second value is n. So if m equals to n, that means if I used 8 and 8 instead of 8 and 0, what we would find is armchair nanotube. In case of armchair nanotube, what happens is the two atoms in the HCP structure are diagonally linked, and if one of the value is 0, that is if either m or n is 0, then you can find the zigzag nanotube. And if neither of them is 0, or if both of them are not equal, then what we find is the chiral carbon nanotube. Okay, so if you want to create a multi-walled carbon nanotube, you need to create a carbon nanotube with a greater radius. So how do you know what the radius of the present carbon nanotube is? So you see there is the radius 3.310 angstrom, and it is also said the carbon nanotube is of the type zigzag, and if you use 8 and 8, you would find that the carbon nanotube type is armchair. So you can try that out by yourself. I am copying my previous code. Then instead of 8, I am using 16, and I am outputting the file in cnt.2.cfg. Okay, so our new carbon nanotube is already created. Now what I need to do is merge two of them. So you see that newer one has a radius of 6.621, which is roughly the double of the previous one. And for merging this, I am using ATOMSK, the mode merge. We need to merge two of them. So 2 cnt2.cfg, the first file, cnt.cfg, the second file, cfg, the second file, and the output file mwnt.cfg. So our files were merged, and if you want to visualize it, just copy it here, and you see here is our multi-walled carbon nanotube, which is evident by this structure here. You see that there are two walls. Okay, so if you want to create a nanotube with other elements besides carbon, you can also do that. So for example, I'm using ATOMSK mode create structure nanotube, the bond length 2.6, the chiral indices 8 and 0, the elements boron and nitride, and boron nitride nanotube.cfg. So our file is created, and you can visualize it with the help of ATOMSK. Okay, so this is our nanotube. Here you can see that there are these blue dots. So these blue dots are one element, and the surrounding pinkish kinds of circles are another element. So in this way you can create a nanotube with two different elements. You can also use other combinations of elements, and in this way, in this case also, you can create multi-walled nanotubes. Moreover, you can also see that these nanotubes are placed at the 0 0 0 or at the end of a particular vertex of this particular parallelogram. If you want to center your nanotube in the center of this simulation box, you can use 0.5 into box to center it, or to take it in any other new direction. So that would be all for today's video. Thank you.